Alright, now let's discuss the racial tensions in the US. SR. Ha ha ha! You thought I said USA, didn't you? You thought, you failed. Ha! The USSR. The USSR. USSR. Anyway, the USSR had this really big thing about how to control the ethnic minorities, or the various ethnic groups. They actually took them apart as much as they possibly could, and then had them rivalry each other, and saying, you know, well, if you want to survive, you're going to have to get these perks, or you're going to have to get these things, and we don't mind killing you off. You know, just letting you starve, letting you freeze to death, letting these things happen. And they really would. The USSR would do this. So they would, you know, have these ethnic groups vying with each other for this power, for various perks or various things, which you see today. Even after the USSR has fallen, we have found that those countries, those ethnic groups, are still fighting each other. They can't find a national reason to stay together, because the reason to stay together the last time they were together was somebody else was telling them, if you don't do as I say, I'm going to kill you. So that kind of Pokemon game was happening throughout all of Europe and all of the world. You'll see it all over the place. I've mentioned Israel and Palestine, and you're probably going, okay, yeah, you know, I can see why they're enemies. You know, it's got to be really hard being an Arab in Israel. The truth is, it's not. There are Arabs in Israel getting along just fine. There's some differences, and, you know, we should talk about, you know, the rights of various groups, but for right now, we're going to say that they get along fine. They don't, but that would take a longer explanation. There are Arabs who are in the parliament group of the Israeli parliament. There are people who have been elected who were born in Palestine and now live in Israel. So they get along. In fact, most groups that you think are fighting against each other get along fairly well. I went to a black high school. There were plenty of Mexicans in there. We all got along. No problems with each other. The only time we ever had a problem was when somebody was like, no, you're not one of us. You're not one of us. You know, oh, this is a black thing. Oh, this is a Mexican thing. This is a Jewish thing. And I'd be like, okay, fine. So that's really how it was working out, was for the most part you get along. You know, you're not the same, so there's going to be some times where you're like, well, I'm not really in that group, so I understand. And that's kind of what shows up in the highlight reel is, look at all these differences, and they can't be accepted into each other's groups. Oh man, there's a rivalry going on. And then people start choosing out sides. They're going like, well, I think I'm going to be on Tavion Martin's side, the black kid. Yeah, I'm on black kid. Black kid, I choose you. And does it really work out? No, of course not. It's stupid. But that's how we're doing things. That's how we're dealing with racial tensions in the US. That's how we're dealing with war right now. We're choosing a side and saying, well, I choose this side. I don't really know what's going on, but they're both so different from the way I understand that I'm just going to choose one and run with it, which in sports is totally cool. For instance, my favorite hockey team is the Senators. Why? I just happen to like their helmets. That's why. I saw a list and just went, Senators! I happen to, yeah. Go Ottawa. Have I ever been to Ottawa? No. I don't think I've even been to Canada. You know, but I chose the Senators, and they're my team. And they totally kicked the Sharks' trash the last time they played, so yeah! But does that matter? No. And it's perfectly okay to do in sport, but when we're discussing things like politics or racial differences, it definitely comes into some problems. I'll give you another example. Did you know that one of the largest gay populations in the US is in Salt Lake City, Utah? There have been Mormons that have helped gay homosexuals get better jobs, get better housing. The church actually, the LDS Church, the Mormon Church, actually supported a law that would help homosexuals and anybody get better housing, and that they wouldn't be have things held against them for those laws. However, since the majority of the people think there's tensions, they're choosing sides, and they're actually trying to punish the other side or not give perks to the other side. And trust me, this becomes a problem. Because as those problems happen, the majority, the people we're all actually scared of, start showing up and start telling us what to do and start changing laws and trying to punish these various groups. And because of that, we end up with these major tensions. You'll talk to a Mexican, outside of black people, and they'll be like, "Oh, I hate those Mexicans. They steal all of our jobs and they do all this stuff." And you're like, do they really? And then when they're together, they're like, "Oh, yeah, white people are the problem." That's true. So that's really what's happening. It's not really what you think it is. It's a game of Pokemon where we're using a bunch of people who we don't really understand to fight a war that we don't really get, but we want to win this argument. And we're so into the argument that we don't really look into the higher and greater details. In case you're wondering, most of the time we can get along. Even if we disagree or we have major differences, we can get along. And I'm starting to have a problem with people telling me that somehow I'm hating somebody or somehow somebody else is hating my group when, for the most part, it's just a misunderstanding.